Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good to have you all here. It's Tuesday, 19th of October, 2021. It's 7:15 here in Ireland. And today we have he's not a guest anymore, he's member of the group as well. Roberto Watanabe from State of São Paulo Spiritist Federation. He's a president in that institution. And today, again, he's giving us his thoughts, his ideas, his view about the Spiritism. And today is important topic is Spiritist philosophy. So it's a lot of things to talk about. And I want to say thank you, Roberto, once again for your time, for your dedication towards ourselves. And I hope everyone enjoying.
Thank you, Esteban, again for being with you again here. Yeah, I'm very glad.
Yeah. Good, Roberto. So while I see people joining us, meanwhile, let me do the initial prayer, and we can have some time to people join us. So I would like to ask everyone to raise up your thoughts towards our mentors of the Spiritist movement, not just in Ireland, but worldwide, and asking them to filling us up with reason, balance ourselves, balance our emotions, boost our immune system, giving us everything we need in order to progress, in order to achieve our goals. And at the end of our incarnation here on earth, we will be able to go one step further on this path of evolution. So be it. Amen. Okay, good. So we have Robbie Brown here with us from California. Leila Spiden, Patrocínio. Our dear Daisy. Yeah, good to have you here, my dear. Thank you. So, Gabriel Inácio. Thank you. We are the one who say thank you. So, my friends, let me share the screen here.
Okay.
Yes. And the topic is vast. A lot of things to talk. I don't want steal any time from you. So I'll be here. And if you need me, just call me.
Okay.
And good luck, my friend. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Esteban. Okay. Hello, everybody again. So today we are going to talk about the Spiritist philosophy. And it's an interesting topic we have in Spiritism. And we will start by talking a little bit about the origin of philosophy, and then we will go to Spiritist philosophy. Okay, so philosophy is a creation of the ancient Greeks on the 6th century before Christ. The first philosopher is Thales of Miletus. And what does philosophy means? It's composed of two words. Philo is derived from philia, which means friendship, brotherly love, or love also, and but love between friends, right? And then Sophia is a Greek word which means wisdom. So philosophy, philia plus Sophia. So is the one who loves philosophy, who is friend of a philosophy, who looks and search for wisdom. So that's the meaning of the word philosophy. And wisdom by itself is the prerogative of the gods, according to the Greeks, right? And and so as it is the prerogative of the gods, the man can only approach it without having ever reaching it. It's like we say in Spiritism, right? That we spirits that we all are, we are created simple and ignorant, and we, through many reincarnations, we are going to progressing, and then our our target is perfection, but relative perfection, because we will never reach the absolute perfection, because absolute perfection is an attribute of God only, right? So in the case of philosophy is the same. The man who philosophizes is will be ever looking for wisdom. It will never reach it, because only God has the wisdom as a whole, right? So there is a difference that we say. This is from Pythagoras, another philosopher, a Greek philosopher, right? He used to say that there are a difference among the sage, the ignorant, and philosopher. The sage is the one who does not philosophize because he has already the wisdom. So he doesn't need to look for wisdom, right? The ignorant also does not philosophize because he doesn't care about wisdom, right? And so that only the philosopher philosophize. That means that he or she looks for wisdom. So that's to have just a general idea of what philosophy is, and why or what is this? Where does philosophy start? Right. So that's the question that we have. So. Aristotle, another Greek philosopher, he lived on the third century before Christ. He said that philosophy, or even Plato also says that the philosopher emerged from the attitude of admiration towards the whole. It means that let's say one day man looked for the stars, looked to the universe, looked to nature, see the order that we have in all this creation, and then some questions arise in his mind, right? Such as, why is there this whole, right? Uh, where did it come from? What is its reason for being? Why instead of this whole, this universe, there is nothingness, for example, right? So why does man exist, and why do we exist, right? So these simple questions was at the origin of philosophy, and the difference from philosophy from what the Greek had before was that to answer to these questions, men started to utilize reason instead of imagination, through myth making, for example, right? For example, on the 6th to 7th century before Christ, we have some famous poems from Homer, for example, in the Iliad and Odyssey, which is two poems, epic poems about the Trojan War, right, between Greece and Troy. And also we had another poet. Homer was also a poet, right? Hesiod, who wrote about a poem called the Theogony, which deals with the origin of the gods, and another poems which is Work and Days. So At that time, the Greek man used to use imagination, right? Because it was poem, it was art. So through myth, they tried to explain this whole universe. And then with philosophy, that changes. So then man starts to utilize reason. So that is the main thing in philosophy: use of reason. And what is the purpose of a philosophy? And the purpose of philosophy, that philosophy in general does not have any practical purpose, right? So the purpose is the pure desire to know and contemplate the truth. So truth is the main goal of philosophy. And well, then someone could think about, but what is the usefulness of that, right? So then the philosopher explains, desiring to know truth. This does not mean an empty idleness, right? That man just stay there thinking about things and with no theoretical, practical purpose, right? Because by philosophizing, the man looks for something that has a moral and political relevance. So we know, for example, that politics, for example, is something that was created by the Greeks, right? The first democracy was created by the Greeks. The first notions of ethics and morals comes from based on reason, comes from the Greeks. So philosophy changes our view of the meaning of our life and brings a new hierarchy of the values. Basically, ethics is something important in philosophy, right? How how should we conduct ourselves in dealing with our neighbors? So this is a main issue of ethics, and this is part of philosophy. Um, what are the objects of reflection, right, on philosophy? So there are three main objects, we say: God, world, and man. So the the reflection about God, philosophy has in common with religion, but there is a difference in the way both of them approaches God. Philosophy utilizes reason, as I said, right? And religion bases on faith and revelation. So it's a different approach to God. And regarding world and man, philosophy and science also studies world and man. But here we also have a difference, because philosophy study the world of man as a whole, right? And science studies parts of this whole. So, for example, biology studies life, right? And psychology regarding the world, for example. And regarding man, psychology, for example, studies the human mind. So there is other parts of a man that you can study, right? So this is some difference between philosophy, science, and religion, right? And what is interesting that Spiritism has the three aspects, as we will see, right? Because we also have some philosophical periods. There is the ancient philosophy, which started with the Greeks on the 6th century and extended until the 3rd century after Christ, right? And then by that time, we have the start of a medieval philosophy, which extends until the 14th century. And then by the 15th century to the 19th century, we have the modern philosophy. And after that, we have the contemporary philosophy, which started on the 20th century, last century until now. Right? So there are four main periods of a philosophy. The ancient are dominated by Greeks. Medieval philosophy is basically a connection of the Greek philosophy with the Christian religion, right? So then we have the Christian philosophy. So this is the main issue from the medieval philosophy. Modern philosophy starts with Descartes and Spinoza, these more modern philosopher, which is a philosophy that is based mainly on the use of reason and to know the man as the man himself, right? The subject, and then contemporary philosophy. So Spiritism, as I said, has three aspects. So Kardec says on the Spiritist book that Spiritism is presented under three different aspects. The manifestations, it means the manifestations of the spirit, right? The discarnated people. And from that manifestation, Kardec deduced some philosophical and moral principles. And from those philosophical and moral principles, he derived the practical applications of those principles. So manifestations means spiritist science. Philosophical and moral principle means spiritist philosophy. And practical applications of such principles, some say it is the spiritist moral, or others say spiritist religion. So it varies according to the point of view of the person. But today we are going to talk only about the spiritist philosophy, right? So, Spiritist philosophy, according to Kardec in the book Genesis, chapter 4, he says that something similar to those ancient questions raised by the Greeks, right? So Kardec says that what is important for human beings is to know where they have come from. Now, where do we have come from, and where do we are going to, right? And whether we have already lived before this life, right? This present life, and if we will continue to do so, will we have new lives after this present life? So this is our question, right? And what fate is reserved for us? What expect? What's for us on the future after death, for example, and on the next incarnations? So Kardec said that concerning such matters, science doesn't say nothing, right? Anything, right? And philosophy, it means the traditional philosophy provides only contradictory opinions, because one philosopher says something, the other says the opposite, and there is no agreement among them, right? And then we have the Spiritist philosophy, who will bring us the answers to such questions raised by Kardec, right? So, and then that's why Kardec says that this is on the Spiritist book, on the conclusion, the final part of the book, and he says that it would be erroneous, quite erroneous, if we believe that the power of Spiritism was based on material manifestations of the discarnate people or spirit, right? The power of the Spiritism is in its philosophy, Kardec says. In the appeal it makes to reason and common sense. So in Spiritism we think, we reflect about our life, about ourselves. That's the main thing. It's not the manifestation per se, right? So that's what he's saying here. And what do we find by studying Spiritist philosophy? So he also says that Spiritist philosophy is based on all that tradition that I showed, right? The ancient philosophy, medieval, modern, and modern philosophy. So we should study this ancient philosophical system. Means, as I said, not only the ancient from the Greeks, but the medieval and modern too. And we also should study religion, the ancient religions, because all of them, he says, contain the seeds of a great truth, and if we as philosophers or spiritist philosophers, we are looking for truth, we should study this traditional philosophy and religion and so on, right? So they may contradict one another, but we can, with the key of the Spiritism, extract what is good, what is valuable from those concepts they have, right? So that's what Kardec is saying here. And then we have this on the Spiritist magazine from December 1868. Kardec writes there about the Spiritism Creed, he says. And these Spiritism creeds give us the basic principles of Spiritism. So there, Kardec says that what is a creed from Spiritism. The first one is to believe in an almighty, sovereign, just, and good God. So God is the first basic principle of Spiritism. Second basic principle is the immortality of the soul, of ourselves, right? The third basic principle is the plurality of existences or reincarnation. The fourth basic principle is we say the law of progress, or the perfectibility of all of us, right? And then the last basic principle is the relationship between the visible world, which means our material and material world of the incarnate people, and the invisible world, or the spiritual world of the discarnate people. We are not aware of that at any time, but there is a continuous relationship between these two worlds. So that is a basic principle of Spiritism. From this basic issue, we have the mediumship issue, for example, right, in Spiritism. So let's have a brief look through these five basic principles. There is a sixth principle, which is the plurality of the inhabited world, right? So, but we are not talking about that today. So, existence of a God, the first principle. So Kardec says on the book of Genesis, right? He says that it's a basic principle that every effect has a cause, right? And every intelligent effect has an intelligent cause. And we can see everywhere the presence of human beings by the works they have done, right? So culture, science, art, they are all creation of the human being. So that's our effects of the cause, the intelligent causes, which are all of us. But then Kardec said, by looking around the works of nature, for example, we see that there are many things that they surpass our capacity of we human beings to create. So that is, cannot be explained by ourselves. For the nature, for example, to exist, we have think about a superior intelligence and superior to that of humanity. So from that path, we come to God, so to the existence of a God, because only God has explained the creation of the nature and this whole universe, right? So this is the first basic principle. Second principle is the immortality of the soul. So Kardec says now on the book Heaven and Hell. So this is the fourth book he published. He published first the Spiritist book, then the Medium's book, then the Gospel according to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, and then last Genesis, right? So there on the Heaven and Hell, Kardec says, we live, we think, we act. That's certain. But well, then where do we go when we leave the earth? This earth, well, meaning where do we go after we die, right? Will we even exist or not? So we will go into nothingness, or will still be alive in another situation? So that is the question, right? Then he says, this is mainly a philosophical reflection, right? That's why I put here. So he said we have three alternatives. Nothingness, so it means that when we die, everything is over, right? Absorption or in the whole in this whole universe, which is something similar to nothing, right? Also, right, because we lose our identity. And then the third alternative is the individuality of the soul before and after death. So this is the immortality of the soul, right? So he says, if we believe in nothingness, there is no ethics in our life, because if we have just one life, so we must concentrate just on this life, and then we look for everything that we find in this present life. So we will attach deeply to the material world. So, and he says that this is the most powerful stimulus for selfishness, because on that case, we will not care about others, right? We will care about only about ourselves. So from our looking for pleasure, for good things for us, and doesn't matter what happens to others. So a social relationship would not be something valuable in this kind of a concept, right? The second alternative is the absorption and the universal whole. So Kardec says that from the moral standpoint is the same as materialism. Materialism is that thinking that we go to nothingness after the death, right? We are all only matter. So when we die, matter disaggregates and everything disappears. So there would be no ethics also in a world who would be according to such a concept, right? So therefore, we have the third. So he says only the third alternative impel us by logic, right? So, which means the immortality of the soul, individuality of the soul before and after death. You know? So we lived there already before we were born, and we will continue to live after we die. Right? So here, the fate of each soul, he says, must depend on our personal qualities now. Right? So what we think, what we say, what we act now, we have consequences, because we do not die, right? So and according to that principle, every effect has a cause. So the things that we do today will be causes for the effect that we will have in the future. So in that case, the soul, he says, must take responsibility for its acts. So here we have moral, here we have acts, because we are free to choose between good and evil according to our free will, but we must be aware that we need to know how to use adequately this free will that we have, right? So this is the explanation of Kardec's philosophical reflection about the immortality of the soul, which explain morality at the end of the day, right? And then he says that the clear and precise idea that the one holds of the future life changes our view of life, right? Because we have an unshakable faith in the future. So future can bring us sorrow if we acted wrongly now, or can bring us happiness if we act according to the laws of God today, right? So that's why he says that this faith in the future, in the future, carries enormous consequences for the moralization of the human beings, and the vicissitudes, tribulation, the suffering that we have in this life, we see in another point of view, right? Because we see that is only temporary things that is according to the progression of we as immortal spirits. So that is the second principle, right? And here he just says, what are the spirits, right? The discarnate people. We are spirit, right? After we die, we will be just human souls, freed from our corporeal envelope for our body. We will keep only our perispirit, which is our fluidic envelope. And these spirits are on the base of the spirit manifestations. That was the base of the spiritism, right? So the manifestation was the first thing that Kardec investigated, right? That constitutes the spiritist science. And such phenomena from these discarnate people show us proofs of the existence and survival of the soul. So that's what we read in all the Kardec's book. Right? The third principle is the plurality of existence or reincarnation. Right? So in the book, Spiritist book on the question 166, Kardec asks to the spirit, right? How can a soul who did not reach perfection during its corporeal life complete the work of its purification? Why Kardec is doing such question? Because we have intuition, we know that it's not possible for each one of us to reach perfection on this short life that we have. Right? 70, 60, 70, 80 years or 90 years is very short to attain perfection. So that's why he's asking here. And then the answer is, well, we will reach perfection by submitting ourselves to the trial of a new existence, right? So reincarnation. Huh? And then he asked it again, then does the soul live in many corporeal existences? Of course, they answered, right? Because we live many lives. Right? And so that is the idea of a plurality of existences. And is one of the most important laws revealed by Spiritism. It's not something that Spiritism bring there in the middle of the 19th century, right? Because the Hindus, for example, thousands of years before Christ, already talked about the Spiritism, right? The Vedas, for example, which is a book from the Hindus from India, they already talk about reincarnation normally, right? So that's why we saw before that the Spiritism is based on this ancient knowledge, right? Truth is already there on those ancient religions and philosophies. And through the law of reincarnation, Kardec says, we can explain all the apparent anomalies that life presents to us, such as why someone is born rich and other poor, or some are in perfect health, or other has some disabilities in the physical body or in mental on his mental side. So why does some person dies on a very young age, as a child or as a young man? So why is the reason for the premature death, right? And also the inequality of intellectual and moral aptitudes. Why someone looks to know more than other, or has more sense of moral than others? So all these reincarnation explains, because these differences, it means that every spirit has his own progression, but each one of us, because of the free will that each one of us have, we utilize in different ways. So we progress ourselves in different ways. So that's why all these different situations that only reincarnation can explain. So that's what Kardec is saying here. And then we go to the fourth principle that I already mentioned, right, which is the progression, the law of progression of spirits. And then Kardec asked in the Spirit book on question 115, have some spirits been created good and others evil? So thinking about that, it doesn't make sense, right? Why God would create someone as good as the other as evil? So would God prefer one to the other? Doesn't make sense to God, which is love, right? So then the Spirit answered to Kardec, God has created all spirits simple and ignorant. So it didn't create them, or didn't create us as some as good and others as evil, but all of us were created simple and ignorant, and God gave us a mission of progress, right? That will lead us toward perfection through the knowledge of the truth, which is, as I said, a main target of philosophy. And then all of us is progressing through our many lives, right? So, through reincarnation. And then Kardec asked, well, but could some spirit suddenly regress? Right? Let's say he's in a certain point of his way of perfection, then suddenly he takes, let's say, 3 steps back. And the spirit says no. The spirit may remain stationary. He can stop on that point where it is now, but it never regress, right? It does. This is a law, part of a law of progress. We never regress. We also go forward, through perfection. And then Kardec asked, well, but if we are created simply ignorant, we can, through many lives, look for perfection. Why didn't God create us perfect already? Because in that case, we would not have to have such a lots of effort, right, that we have through our lives. That's why Kardec asked here, could God exempt his spirits, or it means us, from the trials that are required of them to reach the first order? The first order is the order of the pure spirits, right? Those who are close to perfection. So then they answered, well, if we were created, should we have been created already perfect, we wouldn't have any merit for that, right? Because it wouldn't be the result of our effort, of the use of our free will, right? Or of our reason, of our moral sense, right? So in that case, we will not deserve the benefits of that perfection. Kardec, the Spirit says to Kardec, right? So here we see how God is wise, right? Because he created us, and he desired the best for us, but he desired that we by ourselves reach happiness to us, right? So that's is related here on the law of progress, the fourth principle. And then let's go to the last principle here, which is the communications with the invisible world. So communication to we as incarnate people and the invisible world, the discarnated people, right? So, but is there any possibility of a communication among these two worlds? So that's what Kardec asked, right? So are communications between souls and the living? The souls, it means the discarnated people, right? And the living, which is us, incarnated people, are communication possible among them? So then he says this possibility is a result of experiences. So the spiritist manifestations shows that that is possible, right? And the communication may be secretive or open. He says, how spirit acts secretively upon us. He says through the thoughts they suggest to them, right? So these are a matter we study in mediumship, regarding obsession, right? Because, for example, someday I'm here doing my things, then just suddenly I feel sadness, right? From nothing. Suddenly I start to feel very sad, right? So, but I have no reason for feel that sentiment, right? So in that case, it may be right an action from the spirit upon me, right? So inducing my mind to this sadness, right? So this is that's why it is secretive because I'm not aware of that, right? It's likely to look appear from nothing, right? But on the other situation, their communication are open. So they act openly, Kardec says, where through effects discernible to the senses. Like, for example, well, it doesn't happen much today, but in Kardec's time, it happens a lot, right? For example, the movement of an object. The object moved by, it seems that it moves by itself, right? In that case, is something that is open. We can see what is happening, right? And we are aware of that. And then this communication also can be spontaneous or induced, the Kardec says, right? Spontaneous when it occurs unexpectedly and fortuitously, right? So something that happens where we were not waiting for that, and suddenly it happens. So, some communication, right? Um, let me give an example. For example, in the case of airplane crash, right? We always hear some people saying, "Well, I was going to take that flight, right? But then suddenly something happens, and then I decided to not go to that flight, and then I didn't die in that flight, right? So why did it happen, right? It could be we can see from the spiritist point of view. It could be some, well, let's say this, his a protector, a spirit, or someone, some spirit who give him the advice of not going to that flight, right? So something spontaneous. The person was not expecting that he would go to that flight normally, right? As he probably did all the time, and induce the manifestations. Occur by means of a certain individuals endowed, Kardec says, with special faculties. Who are the mediums, right? So this is, we study in mediumship. In the spiritist houses, for example, we have this work with the mediums, and there the mediums are induced to a situation where they are, as the word says, the medium between the visible and invisible world, right? So this is the fifth principle is very important, because from that principle was that Kardec raised all the philosophical moral principles by investigating all these spiritist manifestations, right? So here's some explanation, brief explanation about the medium, right? It's the person who feels the influence of the spiritists and transmit their thoughts, right? The medium can transmit the thought of the spiritist thought by saying, for example, talking, for example, or by seeing, or by writing, right? So that there are many means by which mediums can transmit what the spirit can communicate to us incarnate people, right? And then the relationship between the mediums and spirits are established through their perispirit, because the spirit has his perispirit. He does not have the physical body, right? The medium has its physical body, but has also the perispirit. So it's from the perispirit of the medium and the spirit that the communication is established. That's what Kardec is saying here. And the easier relationship depends on the affinity between the two fluids. The fluids, these perispiritus of both the spiritus and mediums are composed of fluids. So the affinity of the fluids of the spirit and the mediums is what is very important to the communication to happen, right? And that's why some spirits can easily manifestate through a medium, a certain medium, and cannot manifestate it through another medium because there isn't this assimilation or affinity of their perispirits or their fluid, right? So that's what Kardec is saying here. So that's what we have to say today about the basic principles of Spiritism. That is one of the main issues that we studied in studying Spiritist philosophy. So just going to some final remarks. Philosophy is a construction of the spirit, right? Starting there with the Greeks. And it also means the awakening of the rational faculty as compared to imagination from art, from myth that we saw. And the accumulation of all these achievements of philosophical reflection through time. And we have in the middle of the 19th century, the Spiritist philosophy. So Spiritist philosophy benefits from all these reflections made by the former philosopher, right? So that's what we're trying to show here. And then what are the effects from those among those who comprehend the Spiritist philosophy, who comprehend all the 5 basic principles that we showed here today? So Kardec said that they develop a religious sentiment. We lose our fear of death because we know now that after that we will still be living in another situation, right? Not anymore with our corporeal envelope, but we will survive with our perispirit or fluidic envelope. And then after that, we will reincarnate again, right? And then with a material body, and so on, right? So that's a very different view that we start to have about life, right? And then all the afflictions that we go through our life, we have this resignation that Kardec says, right? Because the earthly life loses much of its importance, because more important than our present material life is our life as immortal spirits. So that's much more important, right? And that's raising us the tolerance, right, for the other faults, right? The other fault in something, but I may also have my faults sometimes, right? So I have tolerance because I'm aware that we all are still imperfect spirits, but we are going through progress. So instead of criticizing each other, we should help in each other, right? To progress in the direction of the perfection. So that means helping each other. It means renunciation of the self, right? Renunciation of selfishness. So that means moral. That means ethics. So that is the benefit from understanding Spiritist philosophy. And then here we will finish with a recommendation of Jesus, right? Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Because perfection, as I said many times, is the main target of us all, right? Perfection, if taken literally, Kardec says, would presuppose the possibility of attaining absolute perfection, which is inadmissible because absolute perception only God has, right? So we must understand then that we can reach perfection, but a relative perfection. Right? It means that we are going to progress infinitely, right? There is no end to our a path of progress, right? We are going at the infinite progressing, and but as as, uh, as we go through this path, we get closer and closer to God, to perfection, right? To happiness. So that is our main goal. And relative perfection then is something that humanity is able to achieve, Kardec said. You know? And they bring us, as I said, close to divinity, close to God. And the essence, and then it is important that Kardec says on the gospel according to Spiritism, the essence of perfection is charity. So it's that helping each other, is to comprehend each other, to tolerate each other, right? To forgiving the offense that someone has done to me, to us, is to reconcile with our adversaries, is to love our enemies. About all this, Jesus said, right? Is not to judge, right? My neighbor, is to have indulgence, to have tolerance. So this is also related to charity, because charity is not only material charity, right? That giving money, for example, to someone, but we have also, as the gospel says, we have the moral charity, right? Sometimes, but just listening to someone who is going through a great suffering, that is a charity also, right? So to forgive is a kind of an offense, is a kind of a charity. So uh, perfection is charity in its broadest definition, because it is entails, Kardec says, the practice of all other virtues, right? Faith, hope, kindness, tolerance, patience are all based on this sentiment, right? Which is what is charity at the end of the day? It's love, right? Charity is love in action. It's not more than that. And love is what, according to John, the Apostle John said, uh, God is love, right? So love is the way where we will reach relative perfection. So that's what I had to show today, and now I'm ready to listen to any comments you may have. Right? Thank you for being with me today.
Wonderful, my friend. It's always return to the base and understand what's how brilliant was Kardec's mind and the spirits all together. This is working a kind of engine.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah.
I
Reason and
love
common sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
We have some comments here from Robbie Brown. He said, "Perfection is an ideal we aspire to. It
Mm.
provides motivation and inspiration for us, something we need to reflect on. We need to be kind to ourselves through the process."
Right, right.
I would say, Robbie, yes, we need to be kind to ourselves, but always moving on. Sometimes we are too kind with ourselves, and we need to be kind and move on. Yeah.
If we are
Um,
just if we are just kind of ourselves and nothing more, then it come closer to selfishness, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, he says reincarnation is a blessing.
For
Yes,
sure.
it is. It's a proof of God's mercy towards ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Leah from Sweden said to us, "I'm thankful for being able to listen again. So much to learn."
Yeah.
And Monica
Kardec.
Lopes, congratulations. So,
Monica is my colleague here from FASP.
yeah, good.
Monica,
Yeah,
Leila, that you see in the beginning. Jersey is there in Dublin now, but
yeah,
she studied with me here at FASP.
yeah. But Dirce put us in contact. So she,
Yeah,
she was
this
the
is good.
bridge between you and me,
Yeah, sure, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, Leila just said, yeah, always moving on. Good. Yes,
Yeah,
we need to move on. Doesn't matter what happened, we need to move on, my dear.
yeah, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, and also is it's good to see, for example, we can see a kind of how the process of this philosophy process was prepared. Like we had Socrates with some ideas,
Right.
then we have uh, Jesus
Mm,
showing the love,
yeah,
and now we have the Spiritism showing their relationship with the spiritual world, how
yeah.
it works. It's kind of closing the cycle.
Mm, mm. Well, Socrates, he gave us mainly ethics, the moral aspect of our lives, right? He was an example of a very ethical person, right?
Mhm.
He like Jesus, died for the well, Jesus for defending love, and Socrates by defending truth. And he brought us ethics, the basic principles of ethics. And then Jesus bring us love, right? With all
Yes.
these his teachings. And by that time, Jesus already showed us the relationship between the two worlds, right? When he, he he talks with the so-called demons, right? Which were in the
Demons, yeah.
person, yeah, and then that is a communication with the beings from the invisible world. But at that time, we could not understand such a kind of a phenomena, and that was spiritism. It came to explain all about that, and to by Kardec investigations, we now can understand how it happens, right? How this communication happens, how it is obsession, which was that cases we see in Jesus' time, right? And so in all this, we the main things is not the manifestation, as Kardec says, right? But is the principles which is behind that, right? Because Kardec, for example, by looking at the many spirit manifestations, he realized that those spirits were in many different stages of progression, right? So that's why in the Spiritist book, for example, he he divided well the spirit in 10 levels, right? So starting by the impure spirits, which is very attached to evil, to the pure spirits. Jesus is one example of the pure spirits
Mhm.
who are close to perfection, right? So, and then in the middle of that are us all, right? Most of all us in all these 10 levels of progress. So, uh, that is not something that he took out of his mind, right? So he did that. That was something that he looked in there by observing the Spiritism manifestation. So that's why Spiritism is a philosophy, but it's not a philosophy based only on reflection or on something that comes out from our mind, but it's something that is based on at the end of the day is based on science, is based on fact, right? It's a different kind of a fact. It's not a physical fact. It's a kind of a metaphysical fact, I should say. But from that, Kardec erased all these principles of spiritual philosophy that join then the ethics of Socrates, the metaphysics of Plato, for example, the 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 the, the gospel from Jesus, and so on. So then all of this we have in the spiritism as a whole. Not in this case, not just the spiritist philosophy, right? Because spiritism, as I showed in the beginning, it has a science, philosophy, and then moral or religion, right? According to the point of view of the person.
Yes, yes, yes. No, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
to be aware, and well, thank you for these these aspects. We can go through the spiritism in many cultures, many different places,
Yeah.
and this is one of the problems we have, because we can say, oh, why spiritism is not spread out around the world? Is it like we
Mm,
have all this aspect? Because
mm,
this is me, this is my
mm,
opinion, you
mm,
know. It's because we do not pay attention to the local culture.
mm,
We
mm,
need to analyze,
mm,
we need to reflect on the local culture, and then spiritism will kind of adjust to that
mm,
culture.
mm,
If we have something already
mm,
ready to mate, it's
mm,
not going to work.
mm, mm. Yeah, we must adapt to the specific culture, right?
Yes, we need to
Uh,
adapt. We need,
uh,
like for example, things that works here in Ireland may not
mm,
works in Brazil, and the other way around.
yeah, yeah,
Things works
yeah.
here may not works in Germany.
Mm,
Is wrong? No, it's not wrong. It's just because local culture, local beliefs. We need to respect this.
mm. Yeah, no, that's true, Esteban. Actually, we must have a balance because
Yes.
if the culture that we are approaching are very different from the spiritist principles, for example, and then if we adapt it totally to that culture, then we don't have a spiritism anymore, right? So the balance is important because spiritism has easily become, for example, spiritualism, which is something more
According to
general, right?
Kardec, to be a spiritist, you need to be a spiritualist first.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Actually, spiritism is a species of a gender which is spiritualism, right?
Yes,
But
correct. Yes.
spiritualism we say in a more broad sense, right? For example, someone who has a mystical approach, for example, that's a spiritualism. Spiritualism does not have any mystical approach, right? So. Uh, spiritualism can easily become a spiritualism or become how we can say autoajuda in English.
Self
Uh, s- self self
self help.
self help or something like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No, this book that said, well, when you are feeling sad, just breathe 2 times and you will feel better. So something very superficial, right? So this spiritism can become this. We can start to talk like this. So spiritism can can also become a dogmatic doctrine, for example, right? That, wow, spiritism is this way also. So I think the balance is very important. We adapt to the culture, but we cannot lose the core of the spiritism, right? So that's not easy to do, but anyway.
Yeah.
uh,
And we have a question here from Leila. She
mm.
is asking, do you agree that we are more fragile than bad?
In some sense, yes, yes, yes. And fragile in the sense that we still are imperfect, right? So there is a concept in philosophy which is says that are talking about evil, right? And then there is a concept that says that about the metaphysical evil. The metaphysical evil means that we sometimes we act in an evil way because we are still imperfect. So
Hmm.
as Socrates said, used to say, we do evil because we are ignorant of the good. Because if we knew what good really was, we would not act in an evil way. So In this sense of imperfection or imperfect that we still are, we can attach that to the we are fragile in a certain way, right? Um, Rather than a bad person. So
Yeah, yeah,
we can say that way. Yeah.
yeah. Yes, yes. Okay, my friend, we are over almost 10 minutes from
Okay.
our time, but
Mm.
we can keep talking here for many time.
Yeah.
Uh, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your availability. I want to say thank you to all our friends from FESP, State of São Paulo Spiritist
Federation.
Federation. So thank you very much to everyone. Uh, and it's very good to have this bridge between Irish Spiritist Federation and FESP.
Yeah.
So I hope to see you more times here with us, my friend. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Stefan, for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Let's do our final prayer. Would you mind to do a final prayer for us?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay. So after all this talk about the Spiritist philosophy today, let's end our meeting here, thanking to all the spiritual benefactors who helped us in talking about this, understanding about these notions that we went through this evening, and then raising our thoughts to God, we will thank Him for the joy of life, for this opportunity of progressing through the reincarnation and going forward to relative perfection, going close to Him, to the Heavenly Father. We also thank for to Jesus for this opportunity to be in this reunited here in His name, and looking from the Spiritist approach. At the end of the day, we are looking to His teachings that He gave us 2,000 years ago. So thank you to everyone for more for this opportunity to be here again. So be it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank all our friends. It's a lot of people here writing. Thank a lot. Don from Chicago, Leila from São Paulo, Paula, Edilson. So Leah. So a lot of people here. So thank you very much. I'll
Thank you
see
very much.
you on Thursday. And Roberto, let's try to do something. I don't know how is your agenda. Let's see if we can have something before the end of the year, or we
Yeah,
will
sure.
be here in January. It's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy, but we are the end of the year.
yeah,
We are
yeah,
talking about the end of the year. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you.
And stay tuned. Thank you, and have a nice evening, rest of the evening for you, or good morning for those who are in Australia or Japan. Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah. Okay, bye bye.